Welcome to the Dynasty Dummies podcast. I am Zach Reed. I am joined again for the Dynasty Dummies Rookie Hootenanny by JMic at JMic Check and Matt Foreman at Fat Mormon. We are doing our running back catch-all show today. I threw out a plea to you, the listeners, and you delivered with 7 names of running backs that you want us to get through today. So we're off script, off book, off the DLF rankings, and into some practical application that will help you, the listener, out. But gentlemen, how's it going tonight?
A little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little dash of this, a little pinch of that. Listen, I love the spontaneity that we have this evening. I love the fact that we're going to talk about some players who may not get drafted, which we'll look back on. And as Russ, our cohort here with the DFPN says at Dynasty Outhouse, never look back. Just don't do it. Don't look back. But I'm excited for tonight. Foreman, how you feeling, man?
I am doing well. I once drafted Bruce Anderson after being undrafted in the second round of several rookie drafts. So being undrafted is not a deterrent in my book.
That fair enough. The beauty is we've got 7 names tonight. So out of these 7, hopefully in the next 2 years, we can get a few of these guys, hopefully fantasy relevant-ish. Maybe. We'll see.
I feel good about that. There are a couple of these guys that I'm actually excited about. I was surprised watching this film how impressive a couple of these guys were. So it was more fun than I anticipated having with this the homework that we were given by the listeners.
And I think one of and we discussed this pre-show, so to give everyone a peek behind the curtain, if you will. We were discussing all these running backs that we've talked about. Obviously, we've already got 12 down. We're adding 7 today that we're discussing. So that's 19 running backs, all with hopes to have some sort of fantasy relevance. And we're curious who's going to be drafted, who's going to be ending up as a UDFA that Peter Howard can latch on behind and strap the rocket to and go to the moon with. So it'll be exciting to be able to go through. But guys, before we get into the players themselves, let's chop it up in terms of what's going on, how you feeling, what's new, what's been tickling your funny bone, scratching the itch for you, what's had your gears going, your wheels turning in your mind. Talk to me.
Well, Matt talked about listening to the Campus to Canton podcast today, and I want to, Matt, you talk about that, and then I want to riff off of that.
Yeah, so I was on Twitter at work, like I'm definitely supposed to be doing, and I saw that there was a new Campus to Canton podcast that was discussing the analytics of recruiting in the sense of recruiting high school athletes to college. And I'm like, this is interesting. It was the first episode, so I checked it out today, and I felt like they did a great job of discussing the film, and they did a great job of blending the analytical side. And I think that's something we need to do as the quote-unquote film grinders, is using some analytical benchmarks to try and find some red flags that maybe can cause us to go back, or just some other pieces to the puzzle. Because, again, there's always going to be I feel like the film side of NFL draft Twitter and the analytical side are at war from time to time because of which one's better, but neither of them are better. It's just what you feel more comfortable with. They're both pieces to the puzzle, and I feel like if you're not using them in conjunction with each other, then you're just doing the whole process incorrectly. And that's one of the things that I'm really going to work on during this draft season is finding those analytical things, whether it be through our good friend of the pod, Peter Howard, or other sources where we can find some benchmark and some trends and kind of blend those things together to maybe separate some of these players we have closer together based on the analytical data rather than just the raw film data.
Yeah, and I like that is an approach that I have really embraced since I came to be a film watcher, because I'm always looking to fill in the gaps of the things that I have for flaws. And one of the things that I'm never going to be is a data grinder, somebody with all of the spreadsheets and trying to look for formulas and analytics and all of the different pieces that will tell what happened. Like that's just not. I'm math enough at work, where I'm engineering destroyers and Navy ships, and I don't want to do that in my hobby. But I recognize the relevance. And one of the great things to me about analytics, about the numbers, is because you can scrape all this data and have all of the numbers for everybody, you can cast such a broader net for prospects, where like I may not have even heard of some of the people that Peter or the guys over at Campus to Canton, or whoever it is that you're following for analytics. I always go back to like Michael Liu, who's one of my favorite analytics guys, and David Wilsey with running backs. But these guys can cast such a broad net with the numbers that I can't, because if I try to watch 500 running backs, man, we've watched 30 and it's just, or 20, and it's just like I can't even fathom trying to watch that many. And the other piece to me is when you fit together analytics and film, it's a lot like a novel to me. So I think that analytics is the plot. Analytics is what happened, and they can tell you what happened and what will be successful most of the time going forward. Film to me is character development. Film is how it happened. So, the analytics can tell you a player succeeded, but the film can tell you how he succeeded and whether or not we think that that's going to translate at the next level, whether or not there's some oddball facet of somebody's game. And so to me, marrying the two is great. And I love this idea. The Campus Canton guys are great. I mean, they're friends of ours. And like Felix Sharp is somebody that I've been touting for years as a very knowledgeable film guy, but also having that marriage of film analytics, being able to put that entire puzzle together is great, because ultimately analytics is trying to tell you what's most likely to happen. Film is hoping to tell you about the same thing. You put them together, you're mitigating failure. A red flag in one side, a red flag in the other side. Go back and reevaluate, reassess what you're doing. If film and analytics agrees, most of the time you're feeling good about it. N'Keal Harry may be the exception, but that's where we're at with this game is nobody's going to get it all right. So having more information, better information, and information from people you trust on both sides of the aisle is going to put you in a better situation.
Gentlemen, that is incredibly well said. And something as a listener and someone who was obviously playing the same game as everyone else, one thing that we need to remember is we don't have all the answers, and you don't have to pretend or act like or feel like any one person is going to have all of the answers to help you move forward. And that's exactly what Foreman and Zach are talking through when they speak on the marriage, the relationship of how they work in concert together. One may be singing melody, one may be singing harmony, and it may switch from time to time in terms of what you prefer. However, they work together to be able to tell a fantastic story.
I think to put it best, JMic, no one's process has an R squared of 1.
Come on, talk about it. Talk about it. As previously mentioned, let's go ahead and get into these players. And again, we've got 7 guys tonight. And speaking of our friends from Campus to Canton, We've got 3 USC players, 1 on the left coast and 2 on the East Coast. Foreman, are you good with that? You excited about?
We need to talk about USC. It is the University of Southern California. Sorry, Chris. It's the Don't even give me. We've already talked about this before. USC, if you leave the state of South Carolina, is the University of Southern California. I don't care that the University of South Carolina was a college before California was even a state. I don't care. I don't. South Carolina, it's so frustrating. Like, I remember right when it happened to me today. Like, I was talking to a guy. He's like, oh, I said, who's your college football team? Because we're talking about football. He's like, oh, USC. I'm like, which one? He's like, he looked at me funny. He's like, you're not from here, are you? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not. I knew I was 95% sure who he was talking about, but I was not 100% sure. And he, of course, was talking about the University of the University of South Carolina, not Southern California. But
that's been hurt. This is a deep-seated pain.
I went back to the well. I apologize for it.
It's just well, the problem is the sports talk radio that I listen to when my phone's dead on the way driving home is a South Carolina talk radio program that's on during my drive time home. And doggies. You want to hear some bad callers? It's the callers that can't get onto the Paul Feinbaum show. My goodness, they are bad. There's a blind guy who calls in every day and he talks about the weather.
That sounds like an esteemed appointment that you have on your drive home.
Thank goodness my phone is rarely dead, but when it is dead, it's a long ride home.
Well, listen, let the Hootenanny continue, and we start the night off with super producer Tyler Badie out of Missouri, senior. He was actually at the Senior Bowl, listed at 5'7", 199 pounds. If we take a look at the numbers real quick, his senior season, just outstanding. 268 attempts for 1,612 yards. That's 14 touchdowns on the ground. And Zach, you've got to love the receiving production on Mr. Badie. 54 catches, 330 yards, 4 touchdowns. Listen, he led the SEC in rushing yards. He was number 3 in the NCAA in rush yards. He led the SEC in rushing touchdowns, plays from scrimmage, yards from scrimmage, touchdowns from scrimmage, and even his plays from scrimmage, 322, doesn't hold a candle anywhere near the rushing performance of one Kevin Smith back in the day for UCF. I want everyone to marvel at the sheer workhorse. You want to talk about workhorses? I'm sorry. That's an inside joke for us here on the podcast. But listen, talk about Tyler Badie. We talk about production. We talk about a lone bright spot in the Missouri offense, and an offense that has been just really void of a lot of talent for the last several years. No disrespect, Mr. Roundtree III. So, Zach, I'll give you first dibs here regarding Tyler Badie. What do you got for us?
Cognitive dissonance is what I've got. I'm watching a 5'7", sub 200-pound running back be really good in terms of a runner. Obviously, Badie has great hands as a pass catcher. He's good out of the backfield. He runs through arm tackles, which, again, for a smaller player, you're not necessarily expecting that. He's compact, obviously, because he's small, but he's got enough oomph, enough burst to get through arm tackles. He's more successful, I think, when he stretches a play laterally and then gets upfield than he is as a downhill runner, because he can use a little bit of his quickness. He can use a little bit of that, baiting the defender to come with him and then cut back against the grain. Badie, I think, also is, and this is weird, more successful inside than I expected him to be, but really good just off the tackle, where he can get that a little bit of that lateral and then boom, get upfield. So it was an interesting watch for me with Tyler Badie.
And let me ask this, Zach, just as a quick follow-up. When you see a guy at the collegiate level measure the way that he does, and win the way that he wins, how do you view that in the lens of transitioning to the next level when you're 5'7", 199, and you somewhat win between the tackles with power at times when you have a runway? How does that come together?
That's the cognitive dissonance. Like, I don't know how the NFL is going to be able to rationalize and transition him. He's not going to come in and be a bell cow, which is what he was for Missouri. Like, there is not an NFL team that is going to look at Tyler Badie at 5'7", 199 pounds and say, yeah, we're going to give him the ball 250 times in his belly and then throw him the ball. They're going to look at him and say, okay, we can use him like Boston Scott. We can use him like CJ Spiller back in the day. Like, we can use him as a smaller back. And again, I think that there will be times where, just like Boston Scott last year with the Eagles, where he may end up with a bigger workload because of injuries, because of matchups or whatever. But it's really difficult to see Badie translate the way he is to the NFL and stay playing the way he does.
All right, Foreman, what say you?
I love the Boston Scott comp. That's the first thing that came to mind. They're similar size. I feel like they play a similar game. I think Zach hit a lot of the positives with Badie with his talk there. I thought he showed good patience as well too. He's shifty-ish. I wrote that down. I'm not really sure why I wrote that down, but I wrote shifty-ish. So I'm going to count that as a positive. I thought he had decent burst. I thought when he got that lane to the outside, he got downhill quickly once he got outside. Maybe not up the middle, but once he got that lane, he could go. What do we talk about? He had 5 games over 200 rushing yards.
Yeah.
In SEC, that's not a joke. And one of those games was against South Carolina, who had a pretty good defensive line. So, but Badie's he's an interesting cat. I think the numbers may be deceiving here.
Listen, I'm in lockstep with you guys in reference to just how strange it is to see him win the way that he does win. I don't know that I see some of the same things as you are. I do think that he is someone who can frequently get what's blocked. And beyond the first 2 yards of scrimmage, I like what he's got going on. It's within the first 2 yards of the line of scrimmage. I don't like at all. The inability to make the first person miss. So many times he's getting tackled by the first defender. A lot of that, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but in terms of beyond the first couple yards from scrimmage, I really like when he gets to the second level. He has a stutter step to be able to put defenders to sleep, which is nice to be able to see because he doesn't necessarily show a ton of wiggle all the time, but that is something that he leverages to be able to maximize what he can get. He has vision to be able to find open holes. And like you all said, he does flash a little bit of strength when he has a little bit of a runway because that style of kind of one cut for him. He's got soft hands in the screen game, consistently has that check and release that you like to see from a running back with awareness. So there's a lot, I think, to be optimistic about and like about his game. But furthermore, we know that obviously he is on this catch-all episode for a reason, even with all of the production. Foreman, I'll come to you first. Talk to us about Tyler Badie in terms of the things that you don't necessarily feel great about with his game.
Yeah, for a guy who ran for 1,600 yards, he had an awful lot of negative carries. Just getting tackled behind the line a lot. Another thing was I think that I find his receiving numbers interesting because I don't feel that he's that good of a receiver. Outside of the screen game and the outlet game, he wasn't showing much. I think that he was Missouri's offense. They had quarterback change. I can't think of any of their receivers that are coming to name who I would even know. He was their offense. So obviously if their offensive coordinator and their coach is going to get their ball in their playmakers' hands, and when things break down, he might as well just get the ball in his hands. But I wasn't seeing route running. it was fine, but he's not really showing much in receiving other than the fact that he can literally catch the ball. I mean, I didn't think he was that great between the tackles as Zach did. Obviously he's 5'7", 195 pounds, but I just didn't like the lack of positive carries, or I should say the amount of negative carries I was seeing. And for someone who was active in the receiving game, he definitely needs some refinement in his pass protection as well too. For someone who's going to try and make their hay on third down, someone who is unable to protect their quarterback on third down isn't going to be seeing third down carry or third down opportunities.
And Foreman, that's an interesting point that you bring up when you talk about Tyler Badie being someone who didn't necessarily show to be quote unquote a weapon, as people would say, out of the backfield in the receiving game, because he is getting a lot of those screens, at least in the games that I'm seeing. It's not like he's going out beating a man one-on-one and then making a play downfield or anything of that nature. However, that's his ability to at least show that he can do that, I think does prove positive. But I love that point that you made in reference to, hey,
yeah, like I didn't even like I wanted to even see like a little angle route. Like I'm not even seeing that. Like it's just I'm not even seeing the elementary routes from that you want to see from running back in the true passing sense. So I mean, I don't even remember seeing him lined out wide or even in the slot. So
well, and I think when they do ask him to do that, it's really lackluster. Like it's not a crisp route. It's not like he's not even going. It doesn't even look like he's going full speed. And so to have a back that had 54 receptions, where most of them were dump offs, is such a weird, a weird piece. I also think that Badie, his size limits his catch radius. So anything up, like he had a lot of balls where he tipped and didn't come down with, and it's just like, okay, well, that's over his head. Okay, and so that limits his ability as a receiver as well. JMic, I know you mentioned this, but I had a similar note. He's a smaller back. You're expecting him to be able to create, but he doesn't. Like when there's not a hole block for him, he does not have that ability to create for himself, which is a weird thing. And this applies inside, but also to the outside. Like you don't see him get outside and get by somebody. It's every time he's making that real good cut or breaking a tackle, it's already at the second level, and then he's adding yards. But he has to have something blocked for him. It's really like Badie is going to be a conundrum for the NFL, because the things that he does well are not necessarily what the NFL is going to look at him and see. And so it's like Devin Singletary minus, but with a little extra pass catching.
I think the running style of Tyler Badie reminds me of a lot of what the things that I didn't like about Darrell Henderson. And the fact that he wasn't able to create his own yardage, the runs that he did have where you could fit a Mack truck through the lanes that he did have. And I think we're seeing a lot of those similar things with Badie that I was seeing with Henderson coming out of Memphis, that I was a little hesitant on. And I feel like I've been right about. Henderson's been an interesting prospect. He has some injury issues, and obviously he hasn't really grasped the backfield in the Super Bowl champion Rams backfield.
Here we go with that again. Moving on rather abruptly here. And I was just going to compliment you on an amazing point about pointing about how Darrell Henderson was winning as well at Memphis. But we're moving on. Can't believe you. Just when the wound was healing. Lifelong. Abram Smith is the next running back on for us today, out of Baylor. I say running back loosely because he also played some linebacker as well as a junior, and then went right back to being a ball carrier again in the senior season. Measured at the Senior Bowl, another Senior Bowl alum here, 5'11", 211. Nice size fella here. So by the numbers, we're looking at the senior season, 257 attempts, 1,601 yards. Yes, Again, just two players in a row we're talking about. Super producers, 1,601 yards on a Baylor team that was really good this year and sniffing playoffs with the way that they closed the year out in winning that conference in the Big 12 over Oklahoma State. 12 touchdowns on the ground. However, not Zach Reed rule approved. 13 catches in that final season, 75 yards, and that was his best job in the passing game. Look, he led the Big 12 in rush attempts, led the Big 12 in rushing yards. He was number 4 in the nation in rushing yards. And again, the production was amazing for him. He finally was able to get the work. No old sticky paws to be able to take from him, and all of the fun folks that we've enjoyed out of Baylor over the last few years. Zach, I'm gonna come back to you again to start. Talk to me a little bit about Abram Smith and what you saw in his game.
Abram Smith was the funniest interaction I think I've had so far this draft season. When Matt said, "Hey, can you find me some film on Smith?" and I was like, "Yeah," and I started sending games of Baylor, and I said, wait, no, don't watch the 2020 film because he was a linebacker, and in that season he had more tackles than he had carries in his first 2 years as a running back at Baylor. It's these two, between Badie and Smith, it's the emptiest 3,200 yards I've ever seen. Like, it's just wild that these guys are 1,600 yard backs. Smith has the power to run through tackles, whether it's an arm tackle or whether it's a head-on tackle. It doesn't matter. He's going through it. He adds yardage at the end of runs with that physicality. While I don't think Abram Smith is initially fast, like he's not bursty, if he gets a block and an open hole and gets downhill in a straight line, he picks up inertia, and then he's got some open field speed. Smith has good contact balance as well. Like, guys aren't hitting him and taking him down necessarily. It usually takes multiple defenders or a squared up hit. So there are some things to like, but he runs like he's a linebacker.
Lots and lots of contact there. He's looking for it. Yes. Foreman, let's keep the talk going on Abram Smith. What are you seeing out of his game?
The same thing as Zach. I thought the funniest thing was I literally wrote, he looks, I don't know what a linebacker looks like playing a running back, but I saw that when I was just like, that's what he looks like. He looks like if you put a 25-pound weight on Micah Parsons' back, that's what Abram Smith looks like playing running back.
Everybody wants to be the next Javonte Williams.
Well, and the funny thing is he's not. The funny thing is he's not the only guy we're going to talk about who played linebacker in college.
Yeah,
it's been a weird. Like, I feel like we've seen this more.
It's cross training, Matt. You don't want the kids to specialize in one sport. Now in the sport, you don't want them to specialize in one position.
I look forward to these guys playing as a punt protector in the NFL. now that Tim Tebow has moved on to greener pastures. I'm sure he's going back to Thailand to circumcise some more children. Anyways, I digress. It's just true. That's what he was doing. I am not kidding you. He was going to he was circumcising children in Asia. I'm not kidding you. That's what he was doing when he wasn't playing minor league baseball for the Mets organization.
Do you have anything else you want to say about Abram Smith, Foreman? Not Tim Tebow, not circumcisions. Abram Smith. Anything else?
I mean, he's interesting. I feel like there's some pieces there that you can get, but I just don't think his game translates to the NFL. He's a one-cut runner with some okay burst and some power, but he's got limited wiggle and straight line speed. I mean,
yeah, and I do think one of the interesting things about Abram Smith, even though he is a seek to contact person at times, I do find it interesting of how I feel like he sees the game, because I do think that he maximizes the minimal athleticism that he has. And you do see flashes of him spinning off of a tackle or him being able to make someone miss in the hole. And I think there's a little bit more creativity that he has that really didn't manifest and really didn't grow into it. And maybe it's a case where if he's playing running back for all 4 years, or maybe if he got more reps, that would something that would have occurred. But I saw flashes of it, and it's not something I'm hanging my hat on. It's just something to point out to say, hey, he flashed some things that might serve him well, even though I don't necessarily know how good of an athlete he may test to be. Anywho, let's keep it going though. Any last words here on Abram Smith, a guy who maybe we're not super excited about, but again, we'll see how the NFL actually sees him. Zach, go for it.
Yeah, so I think Matt said it, that Smith is a straight line runner, and his cutbacks where you're talking about he's making guys miss every now and then in the hole, they're really subtle, but when he actually like makes a change of direction cut, man, that is slow. Like he really slows down and then makes a cut, and then he's got to build speed back up, and I don't love that. Smith is really good at knocking down passes, which you love to see in a linebacker. You don't love to see in your running back. He's not, he fights every pass thrown at him. He doesn't create on his own at all in terms of like, you'd see Baylor would block a double wide hole for him, and all of a sudden it would be a 40-yard gain. But if it's a crease, he's not necessarily finding that. He's not necessarily getting through that. Part of that is his acceleration. Part of it is just, I think, not being a true running back, for his entire career. And he initiates so much contact, and I am gun shy with that type of player since John Kelly. That was the impetus to revamp my process with, if you're seeking out contact, that's a dangerous game to play at the next level. And so I could see Abram Smith succeeding in something similar to what the James Conner role this past year was for the Cardinals, where he was basically inside the 20, let's hammer it and go. But that's about it. I mean, like, I don't see him
without the pass catching of James Conner, though.
Yeah, but even this year, like, James Conner was the pass catcher in games where he was the only back available, but he didn't do as much in the receiving game in the games where he was,
where Edmonds was there.
Yeah. So, and again, that was not a knock on James Conner. It was just the way that they may manage those roles this year. It was James Conner was going to score touchdowns. Edmonds was going to catch the ball and run basically between the 20s. Every now and then Conner would get carries between the 20s. And then when Edmonds was out, you were like, all right, Conner is going to have a 25-point game because he's going to catch the ball as well. But Abram Smith doesn't have that part of it. So you're really hoping he is a goal line guy, which is that's not exciting for fantasy. It's not.
Yeah, he's Kalen Ballage without any receiving ability, which is not a good thing.
Sounds a lot like Benny Snell to me.
Oh man, JMic, you just getting torn apart here, my friend.
Listen, guys, this is strike 2. I am on the verge of logging off for the evening. Moving on. Next up, we have Keaontay Ingram. Once upon a time from Texas, finally found a home with USC. Senior, 6 feet, 215 pounds. And again, Keaontay Ingram, a little bit of backstory for him. He comes in. Texas is super excited to be able to have a player of his caliber as a prospect come in. Performs pretty well early on. Finds himself in the same backfield as Bijan Robinson. I think Ingram gets hurt, and the rest is history. Bijan Robinson goes on to become a Devi darling, someone who is number 1 or number 2 on most people's boards in terms of Devi. And Keaontay Ingram had to go all the way to Los Angeles to be able to find some love and find a place to call his own. in his senior season for the Trojans, 156 carries, 911 yards, 5 touchdowns. However, he did show us 3 seasons with over 20-plus catches in his career. And in this last year, 22 receptions, 154 yards, in an offense that was kind of weird because couldn't figure out quarterback. Kedon Slovis found his way, no longer being the guy there. Jackson Dart comes in. Drake London gets hurt. Influx, just an offense and a program, a team influx. Clay Helton got the boot up out of there. So lots of sadness there for USC. However, really like to see what we saw on film from one Keaontay Ingram as Foreman gets his eyebrows dancing up and down. I can tell he's got some good things to say about Mr. Ingram. Foreman, go.
So I feel like I have been beating the Keaontay Ingram drum for the last couple of weeks on the Twitter sphere. But I just don't get the lack of love this guy is getting. I mean, he hits the hole hard. He fights through first contact. He's patient, lets his blocks develop. He's got an excellent spin move with a plus jump cut. I feel like he does a very good job of converting from a receiver to a runner very well in the pass catching game. He runs hard and he's got good vision. I mean, I just don't. I'm confused about with all those positives, why he's in the catch-all episode. I mean, man, I watched Dameon Pierce and in the top 12, and I'd rather have Ingram. If I can get Ingram 18 picks after Dameon Pierce, give me that all day.
Lots of love there. And let me ask you this, Foreman. Would Ingram have been more of a household name per se in your eyes if we didn't see him be supplanted by Bijan Robinson? Even if he does the exact same thing in Texas, let's say nothing changes. Do we still see him with this lack of love if he stays the guy at Texas?
I think him going to USC hurt him because of all of the things you mentioned about the things going on in the program, whether it be with Clay Helton, whether it be with the rotation between Jackson Dart and Kedon Slovis at quarterback. And now you have everything going on with the new things going with Lincoln Riley going there. I mean, obviously that was postseason, but I just feel like you're just not seeing people talking about Ingram. And I turn the film on. I'm just like, what am I missing? Obviously you're not getting 1,600 yards, but I mean, you got to look beyond the numbers here sometimes. And with what I'm seeing, it just doesn't add up here. Obviously he wasn't getting true workhorse numbers, but in today's NFL, I'm not expecting workhorse numbers. I need someone to be the 1A of a backfield to be able to give me, back end RB1, high end RB2 numbers to be able to be fantasy. I'm looking for fantasy relevance here. And at this point, I feel like Ingram, you're probably getting with a late second at the best, maybe early third round draft capital here. And if you can get a guy who I feel like could be a top 8 running back, I'm taking that every day.
Seemingly an enigma here. Zach, talk to us about Keaontay Ingram.
Yeah, I was really surprised watching Ingram. And I think, Matt, you're right. I think that he's not a splash player. He's not like, if you look at his statistics, if you just watch a game, you're like, okay, he's pretty good. If you watch multiple games of Keaontay Ingram, you get really excited. I think Ingram is very good in traffic, both as a crease runner, which is something I love to see. Like, he makes himself skinny, gets through that hole, but he's also really good at keeping his feet clean. What I mean by that is, when he's got traffic around his feet, he picks his legs up. He's not getting tackled around his ankles, which a lot of guys do. I thought he had great patience where he lets holes develop on the inside and then hits them instead of getting a little overexcited and trying to rush things. Ingram is very good at utilizing angles and cuts once he's in space. So he's adding extra yards just by making a subtle cut and making a defender chase him another 10 yards on an angle rather than just ending up straight in. And like you mentioned, Matt, Keaontay Ingram has very good hands and that quick transition to a runner, which you can add on yards after catch before the defender is ready. If you can do that, and Ingram does that very well.
That transition, it's funny, we all caught that transition, and it's really nice to see because it's an easy thing for someone. Like you talked about, Zach, with Abram Smith sometimes fighting the ball. And funny enough, he makes an amazing catch on the sidelines in one game. So it's like, again, you show me flashes of strange stuff most of the time. But with Keaontay Ingram, you see someone who is effortlessly catching the ball with the hands, transitioning into a runner, being able to maximize yards. I'm a huge fan of his vision. I'm a huge fan of his ability to be able to pick through short areas and maximize and even break through in places where it really looks like there's nowhere to go. His ability to play with a really unique tempo. The first two guys that we discussed today do not have the ability to play with tempo.
Right.
Now, in Abram Smith's case, maybe it's just because he's not the athlete, and in Badie's case, he's not the creator. But what Ingram does, the creator that he's able to be in space, he is leveraging an array of moves, jukes, stutter steps, spins, and he's able to chain those together. And he's really got defenders off balance if he gets to the second level. And he's able to make the first person miss often. Listen, it is the catch-all episode. I'm curious to see if I'm jumping out the window with how my grade is for Ingram. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. Again, I have no USC ties, and I don't believe I'm making the same Ronald Jonesian mistake here or anything of that nature. I'm not comparing them as players at all. I'm just talking through both of them being USC running backs. But Zach, I'll give you the floor here when we're looking at some of the things that, hey, we don't love about Keaontay Ingram's game.
So it's tough. You're going to have to pick nits a little bit on Ingram, which is, I mean, and that's a fun evaluation. I think sometimes that he struggles to escape that initial penetration in the backfield. If his line fails him a little bit, he doesn't have that real quick twitch to get away. And that's part of his cutting in space is fantastic. But once he gets in that phone booth, his suddenness is a little bit lacking. And I think also for a bigger back, Ingram lacks a little bit of that power in short yardage, especially. So goal line, you see him a couple of times get, into that line and not able to get a push, get kind of caught. But other than that, like we're really singing praises for Keaontay Ingram.
Foreman, anything to add there in reference to his opportunities?
The biggest thing that I saw is sometimes he gets strung out a little bit when he's going out wide. But I mean, I think that just might be a lack of a little. I don't know if it's a lack of burst or if it's just. I just felt like if he was if he was getting outside, there was some times where he just couldn't quite get that. He doesn't have that first gear that you want to see. Like I feel like when I'm driving my car, sometimes it just doesn't have that bottom end gear. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I saw. But I mean, other than that, it's just a lot of positives. And I don't understand how, but I'm just not seeing, obviously I saw Matt Waldman tweeting about him today, but Matt Waldman tweets about everyone. Then that's no disrespect to Matt because Matt watches everyone. But I'm not seeing the love for Ingram like I'm seeing for some of these other guys. I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't get it. And it makes me feel a lot better that you two are seeing the similar things to me. And I mean, I feel much better being wrong as a podcast rather than being wrong as myself. So
you mentioned Dameon Pierce, and there's a lot of love for Pierce, especially after the Senior Bowl, and people are looking at his fantasy points per touch is high, even though his overall touches were like 1,000 times out of 1,000. I'm taking Keaontay Ingram over Pierce, and maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe the NFL will prove us wrong on that, but I think that in terms of a complete back and what I'm looking for fantasy football, Keaontay Ingram is is one of those guys that I'm interested in ending up on my roster.
Everything that I read about Ingram is that he was the best running back at the Shrine Bowl.
And I'll say this just in reference to his opportunities. If you compare someone like Jerome Ford in this facet, and this is why I was shaking my head so hard when you were saying this, Foreman, in terms of going toward the sideline. One of the things that you see consistently from Jerome Ford is his ability to keep his shoulder square to the line of scrimmage. So even when he's going laterally, he's able to quickly make a move to be able to get upfield. Ingram, juxtaposition, Ingram will turn and basically his entire body will be perpendicular to the line of scrimmage. And so it doesn't allow him the suddenness or the ability to, if the play is strung out like it is on occasion, it does sometimes make me question, okay, what is his top end speed or what is he seeing when he does this? Because he's not able to transition from having essentially his left shoulder or his right shoulder right there at the line of scrimmage and be able to make those cuts. And I don't know if it's a case where when he has those runs, is his vision being cut off with the fact that he's turned so far? And it's just one of the really unique things when you look at a couple of players like that. And again, there are plenty of Jerome Ford stands, and hey, God bless him. And I hope that he's amazing at the next level. I really do. I hope nothing but good things for him. But Jerome Ford does, like, that's something that he does, and he maximizes his north-south ability in that. Whereas when Ingram is going east-west, it can sometimes be problematic in those instances. But again, I think as Foreman mentioned, we are Keaontay Ingram stands here, and I love to be able to see us come together on that because it's not something that we've discussed prior to this. Next up, another trip to one of the USCs. We're going to Columbia, South Carolina, to talk about Kevin, don't call me Smith Harris, junior out of South Carolina, 5'10", somewhere in the 220 to 225 range if you look in different places. And the guy is definitely rocked up. Look at him on film, biceps on muscles on muscles. Thick boy. People had a ton of high hopes for him after his sophomore season because he looked fantastic. He went for almost 1,300 total yards as a sophomore, and you're starting to think, hey, they've got something cooking in South Carolina. Unfortunately, offense was abysmal this last season, and so his final season wasn't nearly what you would hope for. 152 carries, 658 yards, 4 touchdowns, and part-time work because of someone that we're going to be talking about later on in the podcast, his backfield mate, ZaQuandre White. But let's talk a little bit about Kevin Harris, and we'll play proximity rules this time. Foreman, it's on you to be able to kick us off with Kevin Harris.
So when I think about Kevin Harris, I think of one of the great songwriters of our generation, Destiny, Don't Call Me Miley Cyrus. I came in like a wrecking ball. I just closed my eyes and swung. And that's what you're seeing with Mr. Kevin Harris. If I can wax poetically like my friend, Mr. Reed. But no, Harris is he is a violent runner. He is a downhill hard runner. He's got some decent speed to him as well too. He's tough to bring down until something happens, but again, I'm foreshadowing here. Again, he is with one of these guys that we're talking about, that Zach was talking about with Abram Smith. He craves contact. He's got I feel like he's capable as a receiver. I wouldn't call him a great receiver, but he can catch the ball and make some things happen. The one move he does have is he's got a pretty decent spin move, and he's got some soft hands. I think that people were excited about him. I mean, he led the SEC in rushing last year on a 3-7 South Carolina team, and this past year it was just, I don't know whether it was Shane Beamer not being in love with his game or if there was other people who've caught up to him or he regressed or what it was. But I would definitely say that Harris's draft stock took a step back from 2020 to 2021.
You hate to see it, man. You really do. And Foreman, like you said, Some people wake up in the morning and choose violence. And I think some people, a lesser amount of people, wake up in the morning and their automatic default is violence. And I think Kevin Harris is one of those. He wakes up just on violence, period. Zach, what do you have for us with Kevin Harris?
Yeah, he's got the Bane. I was born in violence.
Yes.
But yeah, like, and you mentioned Harris this year, split carries. He also came off a back injury. Like, he had back surgery in the offseason. So he didn't necessarily get the full preseason and everything. He ended up playing against East Carolina in the second game of the season for the Gamecocks. I think although Harris doesn't run a lot of routes, he is actually really dangerous post catch. Like, he's very fun to watch when they get him on a pass out in space and he can make that catch and then go. Harris has really good initial burst to the line. Like, I think he's really quick getting up to the line. And although he takes a while to build speed once he cuts, Harris is pretty fast with his top end, and he can rip off chunk runs. And like you said, look, running to contact, but breaks tackles. He's got good contact balance. He'll spin off tackles. He'll spin through tackles when guys get him wrapped up. I was impressed. I did not expect to like Kevin Harris as much as I did as a runner.
Very good. Very good. Let's talk through and let me ask this, and we'll play a quick game of one word answer. When it comes to Kevin Harris, do you see Kevin Harris as a day one or two, like a day two capital kind of guy, day three capital kind of guy? And I guess I have to give you more than one word, 2 words, day 2 or day 3, Foreman?
Day 3.
Zach?
Yeah, he's probably cusp. I think he's probably a 4th, 5th round. So day 3. Yeah.
I think he's a 5th round guy.
And that's what's scary, because when we look at the film, everything that he does in terms of the things that he does well, and you all highlighted him really well, are day 1, day 2 capital type things, where you're primarily your first, second down, and even flashing some okay things on third down, in terms of just being able to. Sometimes he has his Andy Isabella body catcher thing going, but he does, like you all said, he's able to, after he gets the ball, he's able to in times make people miss, at times run through people, make the most of that. So I'm curious, with his skill set and with what we think about his capital, how those things come together for him to even have an opportunity to show those things well. So those things I'm dubious about. But on film, again, if you try to tackle him high, if you try to tackle him with arms, he is always delivering the boom, period. And that's something that you can see. And even at times, the quick feet to be able to make sometimes people miss with a quick cut, because he does have those tugboat cuts sometimes where he's got the Leonard Fournette arm going, trying to keep himself balanced when he is trying to turn. And all you hear is a turn, like just a big tugboat going. But okay, enough about the tugboat here. Let's talk through a couple things in reference to things that we would have liked to have seen a little bit better from him. Foreman, we'll start with you on his opportunities.
I mentioned that he was tough to bring down. If you get the guy's feet to stop moving, he's going to go down pretty easily. He's got minimal elusivity. He's got the spin move, but I'm not seeing a whole lot in terms of the agility there. He's ass in pass protection. There was a time in the Troy game, he literally caused a fumble with his own pass protection. He got blocked into the quarterback and he caused a fumble because he was that bad in pass protection. I was like, I had to go back and watch it again because I was like, did he get blocked into the quarterback, cause a fumble? And yes, that's exactly what happened. He's just, he is a I would say he's a minus athlete with good enough speed, but pass protection is not his game. And again with Ingram, he gets strung out a bit on his outside runs as well too. He's lacking that. Again, he's kind of like a diesel truck where once he gets going, he's good, but it's just that problem getting those RPMs up is where he's lacking a bit there. And again, I'm concerned less from a film standpoint, but from an overall standpoint, is about from his 2020 to 2021 is why he is giving up so much. But I actually forgot about the back injury, so I think that may have something to do with it that Zach mentioned. But again, just there's some things you like here, but there's a lot of things that you don't like with Harris. With Harris's film.
Go ahead and close this out, Zach, in reference to Mr. Harris.
You've seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where Baby Groot is trying to get and he finally plugs in the music, and then the obelisk is there, the monster, and he opens up his mouth, and then Drax takes the two swords and like runs and jumps straight into the mouth of the monster. That is how Kevin Harris runs. He's just straight into the mouth of the defense. It doesn't matter if the hole is there or not. He's going to create a hole, and then he's in the middle, swinging the two swords around, trying to get out of trouble. And he's good at identifying where he's supposed to go. It's really bad when it's not there because he's still going there. Like this is where this hole is supposed to be. I'm going to go through it. And I also, like Matt said, he struggled mightily in pass protection, so much so that they took him out on a lot of third downs and passing downs because you couldn't afford to have him in there. You couldn't afford to have him making mistakes in pass pro. So while I love what he does with the ball in space once he catches it, it's really hard to justify having him in there to be able to do that.
It's like with his vision, I've made my choice. I have decided. Yeah, good times with Kevin Harris there. Let's move on here. I could laugh about that for way too long. Sincerely, I could talk about this all day. No, seriously, sincere. McCormick, UTSA, go Spurs, go Roadrunners, go. Junior out of University of Texas, San Antonio, 5'9", 205 pounds. Again, let's go back to the production well. We started the day with production. We're going to continue with production. Back-to-back 1,400-yard campaigns as a sophomore and a junior, not to mention back-to-back Conference Player of the Year awards. What? Conference USA ran through Sincere McCormick, 299 attempts in his final season, 1,479 yards and 15 touchdowns. Yet again, another Zach Reed rule-approved player, 3 seasons with over 20-plus receptions, 22 catches on the year for 184 yards. He led the conference in rushing attempts and rushing yards again. Listen, 5'9", 205. If he actually is going to be measuring out at that whenever the combine and anything else comes, those are things that you can get behind and get excited about. Zach, talk to me. We have the Spurs here. We have the Roadrunners going. We have a lot of things going well for Sincere.
You buried the lead. He just became a dad too. So he's got a whole bunch of great things going for him. I
Legacy here. His daughter's name is Legacy.
Wow. Legacy love. Yes, absolutely. And so I was really impressed with Sincere McCormick's film. Again, this entire stretch of catch-all, I was expecting to maybe like be tepid on somebody, and then everybody else was just not like. Sincere McCormick has very good vision, both inside and out. He's got good burst to the line of scrimmage, but also post breaking a tackle. So like he'll get wrapped. he'll get out of it and then he'll be gone again. And that's something that I really like to see. I think McCormick has very good balance and also contact balance. So like he's got balance to be able to shift direction, but he's also got that contact balance where if somebody's trying to arm tackle him, he's getting through that. And I think he's a really, really good processor and problem solver, which is something that you love to see with a running back, because it's not always a straight line from A to B. You know, the hole that you're supposed to be running through is not necessarily always the hole that you end up through. And I think that McCormick does a very good job solving the problems that are put in front of him. And I really, really love that part of his game.
100% a critical thinker. I'm sure that he's getting Wordle in 1 to 2 tries each week or each day, excuse me. You got to love it with his ability to problem solve, because like you said, Zach, and again, I think this is one of the key things that takes someone from being a pretty good player to being a great player, is the ability to not only diagnose quickly, but to have the creativity, the athleticism to then make it happen after you're able to deduce what's going on. And I think you hit a home run with that there. Foreman, keep it going. How do you feel about Sincere?
I'm a fan of his as well. It's a guy that I know that Zach has been on for a good bit of time. I really liked the fact that there was a lot of things that I saw that were positives about him. He's got good patience, again, with the burst. He's got a great jump cut. He's got plus vision. He's a guy that I think that can, especially with these G5 guys, you just want to see, are they going to be able to play with the speed of going from the group of 5 schools to the NFL? And I think that he's a guy who you can see the traits, and I feel like that they're going to be able to transition to the NFL. Again, shows up in pass protection. Again, it's not something that we're going to see that's tangible with the analytical side of the draft prognostication, but again, he shows up in pass protection. He transitions well from receiver to runner as well as we saw with Ingram. So those things that we're seeing similar things there. Obviously, he doesn't have the size that Ingram has, but we're seeing those things as well too. I was a big fan of his. Just right from the initial watching. I feel like I have a bad habit of judging these guys within the first couple minutes of watching. I'm like, all right, I'm going to be a fan of this guy. I'm not going to be a fan of this guy. And within the first couple minutes watching, I was like, all right, I'm a fan. I try very hard to watch these guys game by game, but right off the rip, I was a fan of McCormick's.
You got to love big playability. You've got to love someone who's going to be able to maximize their opportunities, especially when we get down to these guys who maybe their opportunities are going to be limited early in their NFL careers. They got to be able to flash something, show something that says, if there is opportunity to be had, I am ready and willing to take it on. And obviously we don't see any of the stuff that happens in practice and their work habits and all these different things. But in terms of on the field, if McCormick gets the opportunity, I could very well see him being a household name in fantasy circles because of all of the things that you all outlined. And I'll try not to keep it going in terms of all the things that you've highlighted, but I do want to talk through, or at least mention, his burst is evident from snap one. And it's fun to be able to watch that. His big playability is great. And he's someone that, again, similar to, and it's funny that we even talk about this. I don't think he's the same type of player as Kenneth Walker, but his ability to cut to daylight is very similar. And I really enjoy the fact that, as Zach mentioned, when it comes to problem solving and being able to make a play when there's no play that looks like there is to be made, McCormick's able to give you that. So if opportunity arises, another one of these guys that I'm excited to be able to have on the team. However, Sincere McCormick, while he was doing these things in Conference USA, he doesn't get a lot of the same pub. It doesn't have a lot of the same spotlight, same status as a lot of these players that we've talked about before. Zach, keep the conversation going in terms of McCormick's downfalls.
I think part of the downside of Sincere McCormick is his power. And it's, again, he's smaller. He's 5'9", 205. Goal line and being able to get short yardage. Sometimes he struggles with that. Also, as good as his vision is, McCormick will sometimes miss bouncing outside. Like he'll have a hole to the outside, and sometimes he forgoes that. His vision is even better when he's at the second level past that first defender than it is, initially. And the big question is Conference USA. I mean, you mentioned it. Will he test out at the combine? Will we get excited about some of his numbers and be excited about his athleticism? We think that he's athletic enough to play in the NFL, but it's another one of those, the James Robinson corollary, where a couple of years ago we watched him and said, I really like what he's doing against his conference, but is he athletic enough to do it in the NFL? That'll be another just box to check, but there's a lot to like with Sincere McCormick.
Foreman, you want to put a period or exclamation point, perhaps, on the McCormick experience?
Yeah, I think just the athleticism, I think that McCormick is just lacking. If he's just lacking that extra gear to pull away from defenders. I don't know if we're going to be able to see that in his 40 time, but I just feel like that's one of the things where he was getting caught more than I would have liked to have seen in some of those longer runs where he just wasn't able to just hit that full home run. He was hitting more of a double, if not a triple. But other than that, like, again, what Zach said, there's a lot of positives you want to see here. I'm just again, it just goes back to the G5 thing. I was a big fan of Pete Guerrero coming out of college, and Pete Guerrero just missed out on the USFL. So that just tells you where Pete Guerrero's professional football career has gone in terms of what I thought it could have been. So he's a bit dark on Twitter. He's a bit dark right now. So much love to you, Pete, if you're listening right now. I still believe.
You got to believe. And let me tell you, talking about things that could have been, what could be even still for this next player that we're going to be discussing, Jerrion Ealy out of Ole Miss. Talented baseball player, possibly someone who could vie for a spot in the majors someday. And here we are, junior, 5'8", 190 pounds. He opts to stick with football, at least for the time being. We'll see how things continue to shake out. But by the numbers, hey, we're looking at an incredibly consistent player. No matter the number of games that they have in a season, no matter the wins, the success, he's going to give you 700 plus yards. No more, no less. He's giving you 700 a year over year. In his final season, 133 attempts, 770 yards, and 5 touchdowns in an offense that came alive, obviously with Lane Kiffin and Matt Corral at the helm. 32 receptions on the season for 218 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not quite the production as a receiver that you'd hope for with that many catches, but still, you'll take it. You'll take the fact that he's able to make things happen in the receiving game. One of the smaller players that we'll discuss on the evening, Zach will give you first dibs here. Jerrion Ealy, talk to us about what you like about this game.
Yeah, Ealy is very, very slippery inside as a runner, which 5'8", 190 pounds, you're not expecting him to, disappear behind a bunch of linemen and then come out the other side and still be moving. But he does that. He makes himself smaller, and gets himself lost in traffic and then comes out on the other side and adds yardage. I think he's a very, very quick cutter, both making his way to holes, but also avoiding tacklers. And Ealy has exceptional vision inside. he often redirects his running lane for extra yardage. So, he'll be going one way and he's like, nah, this is better. And then all of a sudden he's over here making some extra yardage, and also has great feet in traffic, gets his legs up high, steps out of arm tacklers who have dove at his feet. And so it's another one of those that Tyler Badie, Jerrion Ealy, small guy can make plays inside, but is it going to translate to what the NFL's vision is for a running back?
That's a fantastic question. Foreman, what say you, sir?
I'm seeing similar things as Zach's saying. A good burst plus vision, decent speed. He's got patience, can make the first defender miss. He does. I felt like he did a requisite job in the pass protection game. I think that's something that we as evaluators take a look at, because that's something that we can actually look at with film. That's something I try to make light of with these guys, especially because I feel like that's so big with getting them on third down. He does have some receiving upside as well with those 32 catches this past year. So I think I like Ealy just a little bit more than Badie, because obviously the production's not there, but I feel like you're seeing some traits that you're not seeing with Badie that you're seeing with Ealy. I preferred him between the tackles over Badie.
Listen, I'm right there with you, Foreman. I like Ealy quite a bit more than Badie, specifically gray wise. But Ealy's really interesting because I think that his calling card is going to be his ability to keep plays alive, even when you think that there's nothing left to be had, and his ability and his instincts as a runner. When ball is in hand, it's so much fun for me to watch, because we're seeing this small guy be able to have amazing contact balance, even though his power per se to be able to break tackles isn't something that's amazing. And maybe that's really the story is, man, have you really seen a player who's not necessarily a quote unquote tackle breaker have the contact balance that Jerrion Ealy exhibits play to play? Strong player, strong lower half. And I'm really curious where he finds his footing at the NFL level, because he exhibits vision that's really good. It's, I think, one of the better grades that I gave in the class in terms of vision. I'm just, again, 5'8", 190. Help. I need my brain to do more work. But from a film perspective of what we see, listen, I really like what he has to offer. Zach, can you talk to us a little bit about what you don't love about Ealy's game?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing with that contact balance is sometimes he sneaks up on defenders, and when he does that, he finishes runs really well. But when he doesn't sneak up on a defender, when a defender sees him coming, he doesn't have enough power to get through that. And so that's one of the things with Ealy. I think it's going to be tough for him at the next level. He's undersized, very undersized, obviously undersized. To me, it's very, very unlikely that Ealy gets a lot of carries in the NFL, which, again, it's not the end of the world, because pass catching matters more than carries, but it's just something to file away. He did hit 182 as an outfielder for Ole Miss, so he's not getting on base a lot. That's one of the he was drafted though. He was drafted by the Diamondbacks, 31st round, so it could happen. And I think he's ineffective pass blocking. He often loses that contain, even though he'll hit a defender once. He's not necessarily great at staying on a block. Ended up getting Corral in trouble a little bit, and so I think that could hurt his place in the NFL, because you're looking at him coming in and being a third down back, and if he's got a ways to go as a pass blocker, that may be an issue for him in going forward. But there are a lot of things that I am bullish on with Jerrion Ealy's game.
Anything to add here, Foreman, to close out Ealy?
I think the biggest concern with Ealy is just the size. Again, it's just the power. It's just a bit lacking there. Obviously, he's playing in the Premier Conference in college football in the SEC, so I think there's going to be less of a transition there. But I think that's my concern is the power. I thought he was a little bit better pass blocker than what Zach had said, but again, I feel like that's just you're kind of just that's to I think that might be just to the whatever the person's seeing. I wasn't seeing a whole lot of that, but again, that's just I feel like a lot of that can be coached up. I feel like there's some tools there that it can definitely be coached up as well too. So not something I'm overly concerned with, but something to keep in mind, obviously.
All right, very good. Last player on the evening here for the catch-all running backs hootenanny as we go here. Going back to Columbia, South Carolina, ZaQuandre White started his time at Florida State. That was a hot mess down there. I don't know the story as to exactly why he left, but it's Florida State in the 2020s, and it's probably not really fun to be down there right now with all the nonsense going on. He transfers to South Carolina, and while he's not getting the work in terms of the actual touches or numbers, as a lot of these guys that we've already talked about, comes on the scene in a major way and makes himself someone who's good enough, or at least exciting enough, productive enough to get a Senior Bowl invite, to be someone that people are excited about. And again, 5'11", 212 pounds as a senior coming out of South Carolina. That's, again, substantial size there for a running back. You like to see that. Final season there for the Gamecocks, 88 attempts on the ground, 583 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not much in the receiving game, 18 catches for 196 yards. So he seems as though he was making the most of those opportunities, and 2 touchdowns. So again, he shares the backfield with Kevin Harris, who was the darling, had the back injury, comes in and pulls a little bit of part-time work. Hey guys, could we be looking at our own 2022 version of Antonio Gibson? Is it possible? Foreman, take me there. I want to go there. One last trip to USC. Go.
I don't think we're seeing Antonio Gibson here. I feel like he's a good receiver. He's bouncy, like literally, like he bounces when he runs. He's got plus speed. He's got excellent cutback ability. And this guy can get rolling quick. He's got good burst. He just gets downhill fast. I was impressed when I saw that he was a linebacker. He does. If you put him next to Abram Smith, I would not have guessed that they once played the same position, either currently or in the past. They're just completely different players. I think a lot of with White, you're going to be doing a lot of projecting because of his lack of usage at Columbia, even though it's like the armpit of South Carolina. It's not very. It's but I think a lot of White is projecting, but there's a lot of things to project with him that you do like. So I feel like his ceiling is probably as more of a change of pace or a 2B guy, but I think there's a little bit there. There's enough to like about him where I think he gets drafted, but I think he's probably a late day 3 guy.
Quick aside regarding Columbia, South Carolina. Listen, God bless you all in the great Palmetto State. Listen, buddies of mine, college teammates, we take a trip every year to watch UK play in an SEC stadium around the conference. And this is, I think this will be maybe year 7 coming up that we've done this. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt, the absolute worst experience from a people standpoint, from a stadium standpoint, from a city standpoint, from an everything under the sun standpoint, Columbia, you are the winner of the worst of all things. I wish you nothing but the best. I will not be returning if I have my choice about the matter ever again. You were rude. You were deceitful. You were terrible. And UK lost to a terrible South Carolina team that ran like 5 plays that day. The worst trip ever. Sorry.
The only thing Williams-Brice Stadium has going for it is that it's directly off the highway. Columbia is the worst. I mean, Charleston is completely different than Columbia. JMic, anytime you want to come to Charleston, you can. I got a bed right here for you. It's queen size, my friend. Queen size. I got a pull out downstairs for the girls. Anytime you and your lovely wife want to come to Charleston, I would be more than happy to host you. We are 20 minutes from downtown Charleston. You say when, and I will have the mints on the pillow ready for you.
My man, I'm looking forward to my trip to Charleston. I am not looking at Columbia ever again. Zach, I don't know if you want to keep this here in the podcast or if it's going to go at the end or not at all. But anyway, I'm sorry. Let me get back on track. ZaQuandre White. Zach, let's keep it going. Do you see the upside, the ceiling, the hope that Foreman gets a glimpse of as well?
I want to shout out Fantasy Viking at Vike_FF, who was the listener who suggested we watch ZaQuandre White. He was the most interesting watch out of anybody that I saw out of this catch-all show. He goes full stink as soon as the ball is snapped. All the time, he explodes to the line of scrimmage. He's got speed beyond the line of scrimmage, and he's also quick. He does a great job pressing his advantage on cuts to the line of scrimmage. And this is something that sometimes guys get, and it was something that Dameon Pierce did well. We talked about it when we talked with Pierce. White does this too, where when he makes his cut to a hole, it's not just a sideways cut. It's not just lateral. He's attacking the hole on his cut, which means that he's pressing his advantage. It means that he's making the defender make up 2 directions instead of just one. And that was fantastic. And I also think White gets his feet again up off the ground. It was I have in my head, I have the 1988 San Francisco 49ers video yearbook. And it was a friend of mine. So I was a Bengals fan, like at that age. And my friend was a 49ers fan. And when the Niners beat the Bengals, he sent me the 1988 San Francisco video yearbook. But in my head, I see Roger Craig running with his knees up and just like taking people in the teeth with his knees. And you see that with White, where when he gets in traffic, he gets his legs up and he's not being taken down at his feet. You mentioned he didn't have a 20-catch season, but I think White is really good post-catch and in space. And so he's a dangerous player in the passing game, even though you didn't see that benchmark that you like to see. So there are a lot of really interesting things with White.
And I'm going to kick it right back to you here, Zach, and I'm going to kick it back to you with a question. When we're looking at the back end of our drafts and possibly seeing names like ZaQuandre White in our 2nd, 3rd, 4th rounds of rookie drafts, what is your ideal? And I know we're a long ways off, so I'm not going to hold you to this. We're not going to run it back and say, look what Zach said. See? And obviously, if you got it right, I'm definitely going to go back and say, look what Zach said. Zach told y'all. But when we look at the optimal situation for being able to see ZaQuandre White flourish and hopefully become someone that provides so much hope and warmth and goodness for our fantasy teams, what's the hope for you to be able to see in him as a rookie that says, okay, I can buy in, or okay, I feel good about where we are in this process? so that he can be a contributor for a championship type of fantasy team?
Man, that's going to be an interesting thing. I think he's not going to come in and be a starter. He's going to be, I think the best situation would be he comes in as that pass catcher plus, but it's going to take an NFL team to really have a little bit of foresight to put him in that pass catcher role. It's a similar thing to the concerns that we had with Ronald Jones. I mean, not to bring Ronald Jones up again, but he's that space player, that speed player, where he's a lot better in space than he is being run between the tackles all the time. And so it's going to take a little bit of vision from an NFL team. And I think you watch him play, and Matt, you said this, that he doesn't feel like that linebacker. He felt thin to me, and he's 6'1", 215, but he doesn't feel like he's a big running back. And I think he's raw also. I think sometimes he tries to do too much when he gets bottled up, where you see him try to make 3 or 4 cuts to get out of it, rather than just take a 2-yard gain. He's trying to make something out of nothing, and that doesn't always work. And I think he also, once he gets into space, he doesn't always have a plan. And so it was almost, it felt like watching my 6-year-old play Mario Kart, where he just, like, whatever comes up in front of him, he's taking it as soon as it comes, but he's not paying attention to what's coming next. And I think that White sometimes gets into that mode where he'll make a great play at the line of scrimmage, great vision. He'll get out in space, and then he'll be like, oh, no, there's a guy there. And he'll make a move. And then there's another, oh, no, there's another. And so he's a little bit raw, but there's so much athleticism and so much speed and so much fun that he could be so much fun. I think it takes an injury in front of him, which you hate to see that. You hate to think about that, but that's the type of thing that I think he's going to need, because I don't see an NFL team looking at him and saying, yeah, we're going to give him a whole bunch of touches. If he gets a bunch of touches, look out.
Very good, Foreman. The final words of the evening for the I guess B side or A side, depending upon how you feel about Ian Harris. The final words here on ZaQuandre White go to you, sir.
Don't sleep on Marshawn Lloyd either. I think he was a 5-star running back coming out of high school as well too. Could be interesting coming up, and Juju McDowell as well too, who I got confused with ZaQuandre White on several occasions. Going back and watching
11, 21.
It was
like 10 different.
It's just all the one. I'm just looking for the one, and you're rotating the 4 backs there. I'm watching on offensive line tape. Shout out to do a barrel roll. I appreciate you, my friend. I appreciate you. But again, with White being bouncy, with him being bouncy as he's running, he's also bounces to the outside a lot as well too, where he's trying to use his with his plus athleticism to try and just win. And in the SEC, that you're not going to be able to win that way. And I felt he was just inconsistent. There would be one play where he would just like, all right, ZaQuandre, I see you. And then the next play was just like, what are you doing? I think that goes back to what Zach said about with the Mario Kart analogy, whether he just doesn't have a plan. He's just trying to run with his hair on fire. And I think that that goes back to his rawness. But again, I think that's if someone White is going to be a project for your fantasy team and for an NFL team. So I think he's someone you're hoping on. He's not someone you're going to have to spend probably a lot of draft capital on, but he's someone that, I mean, why not? I'll take a dart with some upside. I feel like the ceiling is higher with White than some of the other players you're going to get in some of these later rounds. So I'll take a dart throw every once in a while with him. Just if it happens, I mean, he's not a guy who drafts in every draft, but 4th round pick, why not? I'll take a scratch off ticket on ZaQuandre White every once in a while.
And if he's on an NFL roster, just keep him on your dynasty roster. Just hang on.
Yeah.
Be patient. Wait for it. Maybe his time comes. Maybe it doesn't. but it's likely a really low investment that you're putting in, and what you could be reaping in 1, 2, hey, sometimes even 3 years, if you're that patient, could really be something special. And I laugh somewhat tongue in cheek early when I say Antonio Gibson, but you just look at a guy who didn't have a lot of touches in college, but showed a lot of burst, showed some skills, flashed some things that were nice. People will stand for Antonio Gibson right now, and Antonio Gibson did pretty similar to what ZaQuandre White did from a production standpoint at Memphis. So just want to throw that out there. ZaQuandre White, talented player. We'll see what's next. However, we have reached the end of today's program, and y'all know a hootenanny ain't a hootenanny without us giving you the rankings of our film grades. Zach, I'll start with you. Foreman, you'll go next. I'll bring up the rear here with my nonsense, and then we'll go ahead and close out the show. So, Zach, give it to us. And again, for everyone who may be listening for the first time, this is 7 players that we've brought in to the 12 that we've already graded. So we've got 19 running backs that we've run through and talked through over the last several weeks. We've got how they stack up against each other. We've got how they stack up versus the rest of the guys that we've already talked about. If you want to check out those episodes, give it a download, give it a listen. We had a lot of fun breaking down a ton of players in this class. And all of a sudden we're looking and the picture's getting a little bit clearer in terms of how everyone stacks up. And we're going to have a lot of fun come this springtime and draft season and the rest of this 9-point scoring season. So Zach, talk to us. What do you see or what do you have in reference to the rankings of these players and how you see them on your overall board?
So out of these 7 players, Keaontay Ingram with a bullet is number 1, and he cracks my top 5 overall. Yeah, no, he cracks my top 5. He's 5 overall right now. He's exciting. I didn't expect to be here, but here we are. I have Sincere McCormick as the second. You're muted, Matt, but that's all good.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I've got Sincere McCormick as the second out of this group. I've got Kevin Harris as the third. I've got ZaQuandre White as the fourth and most interesting overall watch out of this group. I've got Jerrion Ealy, Tyler Badie, and Abram Smith pulling up the rear out of this 7. And he is probably the only player out of these 7 that I'm not really interested in at all. I probably won't have any Abram Smith. I can see Badie and Ealy being pass catchers that I'm interested in getting in later rounds. And the rest of them have some pretty interesting upside.
Very well, very well. We'll see if anyone else has Keaontay Ingram anywhere close to that high. Foreman, keep it going. What you got, buddy?
Yeah, I don't know where exactly I have Ingram, but he's definitely a top 8 guy for me as well too. He'll probably end up within my top 5 or 6 players as well too. Again, I just don't understand the lack of love this guy's getting with what you're seeing on film. Obviously the raw numbers aren't there, but you have to go past the raw numbers. After Ingram, I also have Sincere McCormick as my number 2 player here. I go a little differently than what Zach does here. I have Ealy as my 3rd, Badie as my 4th, White 5th. I mean, he could end up probably being, if he hits, he could be anywhere probably from the 2nd or 3rd. I think Ingram is the clear best player of all of these 7. And then bringing up real, I have Harris and Smith. Again, mirroring what Zach says, I don't see myself taking Abram Smith, and I think he might be a better pick in an IDP league than a traditional league. Because he might, I think he might be able to be better going back to linebacker than running back. But how did this guy rush for 1,600 yards is beyond me.
Straight ahead.
Anchors away, my boys. All right. So, I love what y'all got cooking over there. And I'll throw mine out here. So, and I was ready to come on here tonight, y'all, and I was ready to say someone's gonna have to tell me why Keaontay Ingram is not a top 5 running back in this class. Similar to Zach, similar to Foreman, he's my top guy from this group that we've caught, and he is my RB5 grade wise. Now it's interesting because those top 4 are a tier, and then he settles in, and then there's another tier below him. So Keaontay Ingram is a tier to himself for me, grade-wise. I've got Sincere McCormick as the next of this group, and he's also my RB6 grade-wise, but he's in this really interesting tier of players that are separated by about 2 points, 2 to 2.5 points. I've got Algier, Pierre Strong, Rashad White. That's kind of a group for me. And actually, Jerrion Ealy's in there as well. Jerrion Ealy's my number 3, similar to you, Foreman, of this group. And ZaQuandre White, right behind him in this group as well. So those are my currently tier-wise. They're in that tier. Again, it's pretty similar to Sincere. They're pretty close. 2.5 points is the top of that tier of those guys. Anyway, I'm rambling. I apologize. The bottom of this group, I've got Badie, Harris, and Smith, and they are all at the bottom of my running back group. I'm most excited probably for Harris and what could be for him, especially when healthy. His last season, and I had forgotten about the back injury, so thank you guys for reminding me of that, because that's something that I knew about in terms of just purely watching football and keeping up with college football and whatnot, but I did not even think about that. So curious, because he definitely wasn't the same guy that he was the year prior, where he was just a man amongst boys at times. So I think I have the most room to fluctuate on him, but when it comes to Badie and when it comes to Abram Smith, I'm probably not in on either of those guys, because I'm just not. They do things just fine, and again, as we talked about tonight, they show flashes. But of this group, they're at the bottom for me. So, man, I love seeing all of this come together and be put in the picture for us, be put in the focus for us, and that's the running backs. And again, I know that some of you are upset. We're not talking about Donovan Knight yet. We haven't talked about Hassan Haskins and several other really talented players. Listen, there's a lot of guys that people could be standing for, and there's a lot of guys who either are going to be drafted late, and who knows what we'll be doing in terms of reviewing the film, because we've been having this going for the last several weeks, last month or so, and who knows when that's going to end, if there are more people that you all want to see. So we'd love to be able to continue to hear from you as a listener. There are players that, hey, how could you guys forget about X, or how could you not talk about whatever? We'd be happy to go back in and give another look at some of these folks too, because I won't sit here and act like we've got nothing but time, but hey, we've got nothing but time. Totally kidding. But again, what a pleasure, what a privilege it is to be able to be with you guys this evening, to be able to chop it up, and for you, the listener, to be able to take some time to hear what we have to say about players. We are incredibly grateful that you would give us your time, give us your ear, give us your attention, and hear us out and hear what we have to say, and hopefully help you continue to put your board together, help you to continue to think for yourself in reference to these players, and see what your process is to be able to get where you want to by the time your rookie drafts, rookie auctions, rookie season comes along, because the 9-point scoring season is here now, but you'll blink and it's going to be training camps and OTAs, and all of that stuff is going to be firing up before you know it. So I'm excited to be a part of it. Fellas, end of the night, I know I can't tell you how excited I am about the fact that we saw this group. Everybody wasn't at the bottom of our lists. We got some gems. We've got some fun. This has been great. I'm excited. How are you all feeling after now 19 running backs graded and down?
I love it. Let's go watch some wide receivers. We got another catch-all show. This is good. And I'm here to tell you, I think the wide receiver catch-all show, at least for me, is going to be a little bit similar to this one, because I know there's at least a couple of guys that I'm interested in this wide receiver catch-all show.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going over these wide receivers, and I'm looking forward to seeing how I think that I was really hoping. I'm not in a lot of leagues with you guys, but I'll be interested to see how the community as a whole feels about Keaontay Ingram, because if this is just us echo chambering between the three of us, then I feel like I'm going to get a lot of Keaontay Ingram come April, May, June, because if his value, or if he gets, I mean, if I can get third round, fourth round draft capital with him, I'm totally fine with that. I don't think that the draft capital is important as landing spot is with these running backs, but I've got a feeling I'm going to be ending up with a lot of Keaontay Ingram on my rosters.
I'll keep you my dirty little secret. That's Keaontay Ingram. I'm on Twitter at JMic. Foreman's on Twitter at Fat Mormon. Zach's on Twitter at Tacit Assassin 13. Because of all of his Rams talk and Bengals slander, UK slander, I'm skipping over Foreman for last words. Zach, go ahead and take us home.
I just want to say thank you to the people listening. Thank you to the people interacting. We could not have done this episode without you because of the suggestions that you put forward. We really appreciate you rolling with us, listening, because this is fun for us. And the fact that you're interacting makes it 10 times more fun. And so appreciate you listening. Appreciate you following the DFPN at work, the only at work in town. Appreciate you following the Dynasty Dummies. Appreciate you making it to the end of the show. I know sometimes we can be a bit loquacious, and part of that's my fault. Most of that's my fault. Some of that's South Carolina's fault. But it's we appreciate doing it. We have a lot of fun. Appreciate you listening. This has been the Dynasty Dummies.